Most prisons have walls. This one doesn't. Most prisons have guards. This one doesn't. Most prisoners know they are trapped. These prisoners don't. Every day, millions of people wake up and immediately begin performing. Not for themselves, for everyone else. They perform for family. They perform for friends. They perform for colleagues. They perform for strangers. And perhaps most tragically, they perform for people who are too busy performing themselves to even notice. This performance begins so early that most people never question it. As children, we quickly learn a simple lesson. Approval feels good. Disapproval feels painful. When we behave the way others want, we are rewarded. When we don't, we are corrected. Praised when we conform. Rejected when we don't. Slowly, without realizing it, we begin building a version of ourselves designed to receive approval. A version that is easier to accept, easier to praise, easier to fit into the expectations of others. And so the mask is born. At first, the mask feels harmless. A small adjustment here, a hidden opinion there, a dream we keep quiet about, a truth we decide not to speak. Nothing dramatic, nothing noticeable, just tiny compromises, tiny betrayals, tiny acts of self-abandonment. But over time, those tiny compromises accumulate. Years pass. The mask becomes heavier. The performance becomes more exhausting. And one day, many people discover something terrifying. They no longer know who they are without the mask. They have spent so much time becoming acceptable that they never became themselves. This is the real danger of seeking approval. Not that people might control you, that you begin controlling yourself on their behalf. You censor your thoughts before anyone else can. You shrink your ambitions before anyone criticizes them. You abandon your uniqueness before anyone rejects it. You become both the prisoner and the prison guard. Think about how many decisions are made every day because of the fear of judgment. How many people stay silent because they are afraid of being misunderstood? How many people abandon opportunities because they are afraid of looking foolish? How many people choose safety because they are afraid of criticism? How many people live lives that look impressive from the outside but feel empty on the inside? The answer is far more than we would like to admit. The need for approval is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. It influences careers, relationships, goals, beliefs, dreams, and yet most people never examine it. They simply assume it is normal. They assume it is necessary. They assume everyone lives this way. But normal does not mean healthy, and common does not mean harmless. The truth is that approval can become addictive. Not in the way drugs are addictive, but in a quieter way, a more dangerous way, because approval temporarily removes discomfort. It provides reassurance, validation, a sense of belonging. For a brief moment, it tells us we are accepted. The problem is that the feeling never lasts. Soon, we need more praise, more recognition, more validation, more reassurance. And before long, we are no longer living according to our values. We are living according to reactions. We become emotional weather vanes, constantly adjusting ourselves based on the opinions around us, losing direction, losing clarity, losing authenticity. The saddest part is that many people will spend decades trapped in this cycle. They will chase approval so aggressively that they never stop to ask whether the people they are trying to impress are even worth impressing. They never ask whether the applause they seek is worth the price they are paying. Because approval always comes with a price, and the currency is often authenticity. Every time you betray your values to be accepted, you pay. Every time you silence your truth to avoid criticism, you pay. Every time you abandon yourself to gain approval, you pay. The cost may not be obvious at first, but eventually it appears as resentment, as regret, as emptiness, as the haunting feeling that you are living someone else's life. This is the invisible prison, the prison of approval, a prison without bars, a prison without locks, a prison built entirely from fear. And like all prisons, it limits what is possible. It limits who you can become. It limits what you can achieve. It limits how honestly you can live. The tragedy is not that people are trapped. The tragedy is that many never realize the door was unlocked all along. Because the moment you stop living for approval, something extraordinary happens. You begin discovering who you really are, and that discovery changes everything. If seeking approval is a trap, then we must ask an important question. Why do we crave it so much? Why does the opinion of another person have the power to influence our emotions? Why can a compliment make us feel valuable and a criticism make us question ourselves? The answer goes deeper than most people realize, because the need for approval did not begin with social media. It did not begin in adulthood. It did not begin with modern society. It is ancient. Thousands of years ago, survival depended on belonging. Human beings were not designed to survive alone. We survived in groups, in tribes, in communities. Being accepted increased your chances of survival. Being rejected could mean isolation, and isolation could mean death. Your brain remembers this, even today, even though the world has changed, even though rejection no longer threatens your survival. Your mind often reacts as if it does. That is why criticism feels so personal. That is why embarrassment feels so painful. That is why rejection can feel devastating. A part of your brain interprets social rejection as danger, not physical danger, psychological danger. And because of that, many people spend their lives unconsciously trying to avoid it. They seek approval not because they are weak, but because they are human. The problem begins when a natural desire becomes an unhealthy dependence. There is nothing wrong with appreciating approval. There is nothing wrong with enjoying recognition. There is nothing wrong with wanting to belong. The danger appears when approval becomes necessary for your sense of worth. When your confidence depends on praise, when your identity depends on acceptance, when your happiness depends on validation, at that point approval stops being a pleasant bonus. It becomes an emotional requirement, and requirements have power over us. Imagine giving a stranger the ability to determine how valuable you feel. Imagine allowing someone else's opinion to control your self-respect. Imagine handing over the keys to your confidence and asking the world to take care of them. That is what many people do every day. Without realizing it, they outsource their self-worth. They wait for permission to feel enough. Permission from employers, permission from family, permission from society, permission from people who may not even understand them. And because that permission is inconsistent, their confidence becomes unstable. One compliment lifts them up. One criticism tears them down. One successful moment makes them feel important. One failure makes them question everything. Their identity becomes fragile because it is built on external approval. External things are unpredictable. People change their opinions. Crowds change their preferences. Trends change. Expectations change. And when your value depends on something that constantly changes, peace becomes impossible. This is why so many people feel exhausted. Not because life is difficult, because performing is exhausting. Trying to satisfy everyone is exhausting. Trying to avoid criticism is exhausting. Trying to maintain an image is exhausting. The human mind was never meant to carry that burden. Yet millions do. Every single day, they walk into rooms wondering what others think of them. They post online wondering how others will react. They make decisions based on potential judgment. They edit themselves constantly, not because someone demanded it, because they fear what might happen if they stop. The fear becomes automatic, so automatic that they no longer notice it. It becomes part of their identity, part of their personality, part of their daily life. And that is where the trap becomes dangerous. Because once approval becomes part of your identity, you stop asking what is true. You start asking what is acceptable. You stop asking what you believe. You start asking what people want to hear. You stop asking what kind of life you want. You start asking what kind of life others will approve of. That shift changes everything. Because the moment approval becomes your compass, authenticity disappears. You no longer move toward what matters. You move toward what is rewarded. And there is a huge difference between those two things. A reward can make you feel accepted, but only authenticity can make you feel whole. That is why so many people look successful and still feel empty. They receive the approval. They received the applause. They received the recognition, but they lost themselves in the process. Deep down, they know the praise is directed at a version of themselves they created for others, not the person they truly are. And nothing creates emptiness faster than being loved for a mask, while the real you remain hidden. The truth is that approval is not the enemy. Dependence on approval is, because approval can never tell you who you are. Only you can do that. And until you learn that lesson, you will continue searching for answers in places that were never designed to provide them. The crowd can tell you whether they approve, but they cannot tell you your purpose. They can offer praise, but they cannot provide meaning. They can give validation, but they cannot give identity. That responsibility belongs to you. And the moment you understand that, the trap begins to lose its power. The tragedy of seeking approval is not that it changes your behavior. The tragedy is that it changes your life, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Most people imagine life-changing decisions as dramatic moments, a major opportunity, a difficult choice, a life-altering event. But life is rarely shaped by a single decision. It is shaped by thousands of small ones. And when those small decisions are controlled by the opinions of others, your entire life begins moving in a direction you never consciously chose. This is the hidden cost of approval. It steals your future one compromise at a time. A dream remains unspoken because someone might laugh. A goal is abandoned because someone might criticize it. An opinion remains hidden because someone might disagree. A risk is avoided because failure might be embarrassing. At first, these compromises seem harmless. Small sacrifices, minor adjustments, nothing important. But years later, those small compromises become a life built around avoiding judgment, not pursuing purpose. Imagine a person who dreams of becoming an artist, but their family wants them to become something more respectable, something safer, something people will approve of. So they ignore their passion, not because they stopped loving it, because they fear disappointing others. Years later, they may have approval. They may have praise. They may have respect. But deep down, something feels wrong, because approval cannot replace purpose. The soul knows the difference. This happens everywhere. People stay in careers they hate because leaving would invite criticism. People remain in relationships that no longer serve them because ending them would disappoint others. People hide their true personalities because authenticity feels risky. And eventually, they wake up trapped inside a life they never intentionally created. A life built not from desire, but from fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of disapproval. The cruel irony is that the people whose approval we seek often move on with their lives. They are not carrying the consequences. You are. They are not waking up every morning inside your reality. You are. Yet many people give strangers more influence over their future than they give themselves. They hand over authority to people who have never earned it. And in doing so, they lose ownership of their own lives. There is another cost that is even more dangerous, the cost of self-betrayal. Every time you abandon your values to gain acceptance, a small fracture appears. Every time you pretend to be someone you're not, another fracture appears. Every time you silence your truth to avoid rejection, the fracture grows. Most people do not notice it at first, but over time it creates a deep sense of internal conflict. Because there is a part of you that knows, a part of you that remembers, a part of you that sees every compromise, every act, every performance, every moment you chose approval over authenticity. And eventually, that part begins asking uncomfortable questions. Why am I living like this? Who am I trying to impress? What am I so afraid of? When did I stop being myself? Those questions are painful because they force confrontation. They force honesty. They force you to look at the gap between the life you are living and the life you actually want. Many people spend years trying to fill that gap with more approval, more recognition, more achievements, more validation. But the gap never closes because it was never created by a lack of approval. It was created by a lack of authenticity. You cannot heal self-betrayal with applause. You cannot cure emptiness with compliments. You cannot build self-respect by abandoning yourself. The mathematics simply do not work. This is why some people look successful on the outside while feeling lost on the inside. The world sees achievement, but they feel disconnection. The world sees confidence, but they feel insecurity. The world sees success, but they feel trapped because they know something nobody else knows. They know how much of their life was spent performing, and performance has a hidden cost. It is exhausting. Pretending is exhausting. Constantly managing perceptions is exhausting. Living for an audience is exhausting. Eventually, the mask becomes heavier than the person wearing it. And that is when people begin to break. Not because life is hard, because they are tired of carrying someone they were never meant to be. The truth is that every great life requires disappointing someone. Every meaningful path requires criticism. Every authentic decision risks rejection. There is no way around it. If you live honestly, some people will misunderstand you. If you pursue your dreams, some people will doubt you. If you speak your truth, some people will disagree with you. That is not a flaw in the process. That is the process. The moment you stop trying to avoid disapproval, something remarkable happens. You reclaim your energy. You reclaim your direction. You reclaim your voice. Most importantly, you reclaim your life. Because a life built on approval belongs to the crowd. But a life built on authenticity belongs to you. And that difference changes everything. There comes a moment in every meaningful life when a choice must be made. Not between success and failure, not between comfort and struggle, but between authenticity and approval. Most people never realize this moment has arrived. They simply continue doing what they have always done, seeking permission, seeking validation, seeking acceptance, hoping that if they can please enough people, they will finally feel free. But freedom does not come from approval. Freedom begins when approval is no longer necessary. That is the lesson many people spend years avoiding, because disappointing people feels uncomfortable. It feels selfish. It feels wrong. It feels dangerous. Yet some of the most important decisions you will ever make are decisions that disappoint someone. The moment you choose your own path, someone will disagree. The moment you stop pretending, someone will feel uncomfortable. The moment you stop living according to expectations, someone will criticize you. That is not evidence you are doing something wrong. It is often evidence you are finally doing something right. Think about it. Every person who has ever lived authentically has disappointed someone. Every innovator, every artist, every entrepreneur, every leader, every individual who chose a meaningful life over a popular one. They all faced criticism, doubt, judgment, resistance, not because they failed, because they refused to conform. The uncomfortable truth is that many people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of disapproval. Failure can be survived. Disapproval feels personal. It feels emotional. It feels like rejection. And because of that, countless people choose a smaller life, a quieter life, a safer life, not because it is what they want, because it is what others will approve of. The price seems small at first, a compromise here, an adjustment there, but eventually those compromises become a cage built from other people's expectations. And the longer you stay inside it, the harder it becomes to leave, because approval creates dependence. The more you rely on it, the more frightening its absence becomes. This is why so many people feel trapped, not by circumstances, by expectations. They are carrying dreams they do not want, responsibilities they never chose, identities they never created, and all because they fear disappointing someone. The irony is that disappointment is unavoidable. No matter what you do, someone will be disappointed. If you pursue your dreams, someone will disagree. If you change your life, someone will question it. If you speak honestly, someone will dislike it. If you remain authentic, someone will misunderstand you. There is no path through life that avoids disappointment. The only choice is whose disappointment you are willing to live with, theirs or your own. That question changes everything, because many people spend years avoiding the disappointment of others, only to wake up carrying the disappointment of themselves. And that burden is far heavier than criticism, far heavier than judgment, far heavier than rejection. There is nothing more painful than realizing you abandoned yourself for acceptance. Nothing more painful than knowing you sacrificed your truth for approval. Nothing more painful than reaching the end of a chapter and wondering who you could have become if you had been brave enough to disappoint people. That is why freedom requires courage, not the courage to fight others, the courage to disappoint them, the courage to be misunderstood, the courage to be criticized, the courage to stand alone when necessary. Because authenticity is expensive. It costs approval. It costs comfort. It costs certainty. But what it gives in return is priceless. Self-respect, peace, clarity, direction, a life that actually belongs to you. The people who are truly free are not those who receive the most approval. They are the people who no longer depend on it. They understand something most people never learn. The goal is not to make everyone happy. The goal is to remain true to yourself while treating others with respect. Those are very different things. One requires performance. The other requires integrity. And integrity is where freedom lives. Because when you stop seeking permission to be yourself, something remarkable happens. You stop editing your personality. You stop shrinking your ambitions. You stop apologizing for your dreams. You stop negotiating with your own potential. For the first time, you begin living from conviction instead of fear. And that is where real confidence is born. Not from praise, not from applause, not from validation, but from knowing that even if the crowd disapproves, you are still willing to stand by who you are. That is freedom. And freedom always begins with the willingness to disappoint people. There is a question most people never ask, a question so uncomfortable that many spend their entire lives avoiding it. The question is simple. Why do you care so much about the opinions of people you would never trade lives with? Think about that for a moment. The criticism that keeps you awake at night, the judgment you fear, the approval you desperately seek. How many of those people are actually living lives you admire? How many have built the future you want? How many possess the wisdom you seek? How many are carrying the responsibilities you carry? Often the answer is surprising. Very few. Yet somehow their opinions continue to influence your decisions. Their approval continues to affect your confidence. Their judgment continues to shape your behavior. And that is one of the strangest contradictions in human life. We allow people to influence us in ways we would never allow them to lead us. Imagine asking someone for directions, then discovering they are completely lost themselves. Would you follow them? Of course not. Yet many people do exactly that when it comes to life. They allow confused people to define success. They allow fearful people to define possibility. They allow insecure people to define their worth. They allow the crowd to determine their direction. And the crowd is often just as lost as they are. The truth is that people judge what they do not understand. They criticize what threatens their comfort. They question what challenges their assumptions. Not because they are evil, because they are human. Most criticism is not about you. It is a reflection of the person giving it. Their fears, their limitations, their beliefs, their insecurities. Yet many people spend years treating criticism like truth. Imagine shrinking your dreams because someone who never pursued theirs laughed at yours. Imagine abandoning your goals because someone who gave up on theirs doubted yours. Imagine allowing people who never took the risk to decide whether your risk is worth taking. That is what happens when approval becomes your compass. You begin giving authority to people who never earned it. The tragedy is not that people judge you. People will always judge. The tragedy is believing their judgment is more important than your own experience. Because the people who criticize you rarely carry the consequences of your decisions. You do. If you abandon your dream, they do not live with that regret. You do. If you settle for less than you want, they do not carry that burden. You do. If you spend decades living for approval, they do not experience the emptiness. You do. This is why seeking approval is such a dangerous game. The people whose opinions matter least often have the loudest voices, and the people whose opinions matter most are often silent. Think about history. Every meaningful idea was criticized. Every innovation was doubted. Every great achievement was questioned. Every person who stood apart from the crowd faced resistance from the crowd. Not because they were wrong, because they were different. And difference makes people uncomfortable. The crowd loves conformity. It feels safe, predictable, comfortable. But growth has never come from conformity. Growth comes from the willingness to think independently, to act independently, to live independently. That requires something many people never develop: the ability to disappoint the crowd. Most people want freedom, but few are willing to pay the price. Because freedom requires criticism. Freedom requires misunderstanding. Freedom requires standing apart. The crowd cannot give you freedom. The crowd can only give you approval. And those are not the same thing. Approval feels good. Freedom feels meaningful. Approval is temporary. Freedom lasts. Approval depends on others. Freedom depends on you. That is why some of the happiest people are not the most admired. They are simply the most authentic. They stopped asking for permission. They stopped negotiating with their own values. They stopped adjusting themselves to fit every expectation. And in doing so, they discovered something powerful. The people who truly matter do not require you to become someone else. Real respect does not demand self-betrayal. Real connection does not require constant performance. Real relationships survive authenticity. Only superficial ones depend on masks. This realization changes everything. Because once you understand that not every opinion deserves equal weight, you become selective. You stop listening to every voice. You stop fearing every judgment. You stop treating criticism like a command. And for the first time, you begin choosing whose opinions actually deserve space in your mind. That is where maturity begins. Not when people stop judging you, but when their judgment no longer controls you. Because the moment you stop allowing unqualified opinions to shape your life, you take back something precious: your power. And once you reclaim that power, the trap of approval begins to collapse. There is a day that changes everything. Not the day you become successful. Not the day you become wealthy. Not the day you become famous. the day you stop needing permission to be yourself. For many people, that day never comes. They spend their entire lives waiting for approval, waiting for validation, waiting for acceptance, waiting for someone to tell them they're allowed to pursue their dreams, allowed to speak their truth, allowed to live differently, allowed to become who they were meant to be. But permission rarely arrives, because life does not work that way. Nobody can give you ownership of your life. It already belongs to you. The problem is that most people spend years acting as if it belongs to everyone else. They ask the world for approval before they take action, approval before they change, approval before they grow, approval before they become. And while they wait, time passes. Days become months. Months become years. Years become decades. The tragedy is not that they failed. The tragedy is that they never truly lived, because the need for approval creates hesitation, and hesitation steals time. A person who trusts themselves moves. A person who waits for approval hesitates. And life rewards movement, not hesitation. Think about how many opportunities disappear because people are waiting for certainty, waiting for reassurance, waiting for validation, waiting for everyone to agree. But the people who change their lives rarely have those things. They move despite uncertainty. They move despite criticism. They move despite fear, because they understand something powerful. The crowd does not determine what is possible. The crowd simply reacts to what is possible. Every meaningful achievement begins as an unpopular idea. Every transformation begins as a personal decision. Every breakthrough begins with someone refusing to wait for permission. And that refusal is where freedom begins. Because freedom is not the absence of judgment. Freedom is the ability to move forward despite it. Many people believe confidence comes from approval. It doesn't. Approval creates comfort. Confidence comes from trust. Trust in your values. Trust in your decisions. Trust in your ability to handle the consequences. That kind of confidence cannot be given by the crowd. It must be built internally, slowly, painfully, deliberately, and the process begins the moment you stop asking everyone else who you should be. There is a strange thing that happens when you stop seeking approval. You become lighter, not because life becomes easier, because you stop carrying unnecessary weight. The weight of expectations, the weight of performance, the weight of pretending, the weight of constantly managing how people perceive you. For the first time, you begin living honestly, and honesty creates peace, not because everyone approves, because you approve of yourself. That is the approval that matters most, not the approval of strangers, not the approval of critics, not the approval of the crowd. Your own, because at the end of the day, you are the person who must live with your choices. You are the person who carries your regrets. You are the person who faces your reflection, and no amount of external validation can compensate for internal disappointment. That is why the ultimate goal is not popularity. It is integrity, the ability to look at your life and know it belongs to you. The ability to make decisions based on conviction instead of fear. The ability to remain authentic even when authenticity is unpopular. That is real freedom. And freedom changes everything. The truth is that people will always have opinions. Some will support you. Some will doubt you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will criticize you. That will never change. The only thing that can change is the amount of power you give those opinions, because opinions are only powerful when you surrender authority to them. The moment you stop doing that, something remarkable happens. You become dangerous. Not dangerous to others, dangerous to limitations, dangerous to fear, dangerous to every expectation that once controlled your life. Because a person who no longer needs approval becomes incredibly difficult to stop. They no longer require applause to continue. They no longer require validation to believe in themselves. They no longer require permission to pursue what matters. And that is when transformation begins. Not when the crowd finally accepts you, but when you finally accept yourself. Perhaps that is the lesson hidden beneath the trap of approval. The freedom you have been searching for was never on the other side of acceptance. It was on the other side of needing it. The prison was never other people. The prison was dependence. The cage was never judgment. The cage was fear. And the key was in your hands the entire time. The day you stopped needing permission. The day you stopped negotiating with your own authenticity. The day you stopped living for applause. That is the day you finally become free. And freedom is worth disappointing the entire crowd for.